Hello students, and welcome to the next Scratch tutorial video. This video is going to focus on making the system that lets us restrict where our character can walk to within our map. Currently, our character can walk anywhere, even if it doesn't make sense based off our map. That's what we're going to be fixing today. Firstly, I did make a few changes to the movement system, which you're welcome to use if you would like. The first thing I did was use an OR statement down here in operators, OR, and I put in key right arrow or key D pressed. So now, when I do either the right arrow or the D key, I move to the right. I did this for all of the directions, so I can use WASD to move around, or I can use the arrow keys. This is up to you, and you are welcome to just use the arrow keys if you would like. Secondly, I also created a system so that the character would be facing the correct direction when they stopped moving. They wouldn't switch back to always be facing down. To do that, I made a variable down here called last direction. For each arrow key or letter pressed, I had it set the variable last direction to be the number that is the same number as whichever costume is facing that direction. I then have it forever switch to be that last direction so that no matter what we do, it stays facing that direction until we move in a different direction. I'm going to pause for a moment, so if you would like to copy this implementation right now, you can. Okay, now we need to make the element that will actually stop character from moving. To do that, we're going to go down to the Add Sprite option, but we're going to click on Paint. This will let us draw our own custom element on top of our map. You can see this blue outline here. This is approximately the outline of our screen. So I'm going to use the default brush here, and I think that purple color is fine. And I'm going to try to draw along the outside of where I want my character to be able to walk. So I'm going to click maybe about here. That wasn't right. Let's try a little further out. There we go. And you can see that purple dot has appeared on the screen, and it's in about the right place for that edge. I'm going to use that dot to help me draw the approximate shape that I want this boundary to be. Now you'll notice that I left some space at the top here. This is because the way this collision boundary is going to work in Scratch is that it will stop your character from moving when any part of your character touches that boundary. This means we need to leave space for our character's body and head to fit here before they touch that boundary. Now this shape looks to be pretty good. I can move it around if I wanted. And if, for whatever reason, it's not quite right, I could always come back and edit it later. Let's go ahead and move to code. And we're going to add the little bit of code that needs to be within this sprite element. Before we do that, we should name this. I'm going to name it Cave Start because that's the name of this map. This is my Cave Start map. And then I'm going to add the word collision. Collision in video games is the word that defines where a character can be and where a character cannot be. So calling it Cave Start Collision tells me that it's the collision for this map. We're going to start with a when flag clicked. Right now, we just have the one map. As we add more maps in the future, this will probably change to say when we switch to this map. But for now, a when clicked is okay and is going to let it work in our test. So after the when clicked, we want to go to looks and we want to make sure that it is visible. So let's add a show that will make it show up. But we don't really actually want to see it. So we're going to add a set color effect to 0 and change that color effect to be ghost. Now we can't set this to be 100 because that would make it completely invisible and then our character would never interact with it, would never touch it. But we can set this to be 99.999, which will make it 99.999% invisible. And now if I click the play button, you'll see it pretty much disappears, but it is still there. That's all we need in this element. Let's go back to our main character sprite, and we're going to add another section up here. We're going to use another when flag is clicked, and we're going to set some variables. Firstly, we need to make these variables. So let's go down to our variables section and click make a variable. I'm going to name this old x, and I'm going to make another one and call it old y. Now I want to grab two set2 pieces here. Let's add set last direction to 0, set last direction to 0, and let's change these last directions to be old x and old y. Now we don't actually want to set them to 0. We want to set them to the actual x and y of where our character is. So let's go back up to motion, and we're going to grab this x position and set old x to x position, set old y to y position. I know we're going to need this element again, so let's right-click and duplicate these two and bring them over to the side so we can use them later. So now when the map is first started, it's going to set these variables to be the position of our character. This is good, but now we need it to actually restrict our character so they can't move outside of that boundary. So let's go over to control and grab a forever element. We want this to always run so that it is always checking whether this character is touching that border, that collision. So inside that forever, let's put an if then statement. And we want it to say that if it is touching this element, this sprite, then it should go back to its old position instead of moving. So let's go add a sensing object for touching. Drag that into our if statement, and then make it, instead of touching our mouse, we want it to touch cave start collision. Then we want it to move. Let's go up to motion and set go to, and we want those x and y to be our old x and old y. So we'll go down to variables and we'll grab our old x and put that in for x, and our old y and put that in for y. So right now, if it touched that boundary, it would go back to that original saved position. That's good, but we don't want it to go back to the middle. We want it to always update old x and old y to the current position. So we're going to bring this into the forever block, but outside of the if statement. So now it will always update this old x and y unless it touches that cave start collision, in which case it will just go back to that old x and y. So if we hit play, we'll see that that works. I now can't move outside of this boundary. This boundary keeps me locked in. This seems pretty good, but I can't walk all the way over to the left of my screen. So I think I probably want to make some changes to my shape. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Cave Start. And temporarily, I'm going to set this to 0 and run it so I can see the boundary again. Now let's go into Costumes, and I'm going to erase this side and bring it out a little bit further. Okay, I think I like that shape. So let's go back to code and reset this to 99.999. And now it should work invisibly as the outer boundary of where my character can walk. The last thing we need to do is make sure that our caveman starts at a good original position. So we're going to click on our caveman character, and we're going to add another element in here. Let's add a when clicked. I'm going to put this over to the side here. And this when clicked is another one that we would change to say when this map is loaded once we have multiple maps. But for now, this when clicked is right. And this when clicked, I then want to set the X and Y values to be this starting position, which is -4, 3. So let's make that -4 and 3. And now our character should start here when the map is started. So even if I move and then I restart, you'll see my character jumps back to being there. That is it for this tutorial. Your character should now be restricted in where they can walk, and you should be able to draw complex collisions that include your walls, any furniture you have, any spaces that your character should not be able to walk through. The next tutorial is going to focus on adding our menu screen and our start button so that we can get into our first world, which is this map here. Thank you for joining, and I'll see you in the next one.